Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Challenge We Face with Quacy Smith. I am your host, Kathleen Harris, and we have a very special episode in store for you today. We are going to have a conversation about criminal justice reform, and we will give some background information on the subject, but we also have two guests present here with us today who can give some real context to this issue with their family story. We have the Baker family here today, so thank you, Judy, and thank you, Kimi, for being here with us. Awesome. First of all, the man himself, Mr. Smith, how are you doing today?
Thank you, and it's always good to be in these sessions, and to Judy and Kimi, thank you all for being here. And of course, you know how I feel about you and Stephen, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. One of the things that I've always been close to the criminal justice world. One of my bachelor's degree is actually in criminal justice management. And so I've always been close to the criminal justice world. In fact, from the time I was a kid, actually, 12 years old, I was an Explorer Scout. Explorer Scout was similar to what the Boy Scouts is, but the Explorer Scouts, they hang around with the police officers and drive around in the cop car. I think my mom sent me over there with the police to keep me out of trouble, because I would be in and out of the jails and the cop cars, and I saw folks get arrested. And I remember the first time I was riding in a patrol unit with Officer Jason Green, and the first time they call it Roll Code 3 with the lights and sirens on. I mean, I was just fascinated. You would have thought we drove 30 miles, but it was only Blythe. It's in Blythe. There's nothing more than 4 miles, you know what I mean? Right. It was up the street and around the corner, but it felt like an eternity. And to turn on the lights and sirens and see people get out of the way and all of that stuff, it was just fascinating as a 12, 13-year-old kid. And so I literally grew up around Blythe Police Department from the time I was a child. A lot of the officers that literally raised me on their lap, retired Chief Bob Grady, he's actually a resident in the Congressional District. Chief Bob Matthews, he's a resident in the 9th Congressional District. Jeff Wade and Tim Wade, as I mentioned earlier, Jason Green, and so many others down through the years that have, poured this life or this understanding of law enforcement into me. I knew from a youngster that I, wanted to be a police officer and to serve the community, because some of the fun stuff, drive. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to drive in a Crown Victoria 120 miles an hour and not get a ticket? You know what I mean? Because it's completely lawful, blow your air horn at folks and all of that other stuff. As a kid, this was the thinking of it, and that's one of the reasons I went back to my hometown. To serve. I saw those men do great things in a small community. When you grow up in a small community, you don't have the privileges of officers, if it's considered a privilege, that you do in big cities where you live in Scottsdale, but you're patrolling in South Phoenix. You have no connection to the community. You don't know who lives there, any of that stuff. We didn't have that luxury. In Blythe, California, you arrested this person that afternoon, you were going to see him at Albertsons because there's only one grocery store. You were going to see him. So you knew you couldn't, act up with these people. You had to do justice the right way. And so that was a part of it. I watched that growing up, and I'm forever indebted to the Blythe Police Department and those officers. As a defense attorney, there is a lot that I have seen, and we'll go into some of that even as it relates to Stephen. As a pastor, you'd be surprised how many of the parishioners, the legal problems that you have to deal with, and all of the legal problems aren't civil legal problems. Some of them are criminal, legal problems, because you're in the business of helping people. I'll even make it more personal. Even my own family. I like to, some folks would like to think that nobody in your family's been in trouble, but I mean, somebody, I made a joke. Don't hold me to this, but I made a joke sometime. I said, if you shake my family tree, out would fall fruits and nuts. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, I've had, my family's no different than anybody right. else's, That's family. Right. And so you've had these challenges, you've faced them, you've seen them. I've seen them different sides of my life. I preface my statements by saying that because it has shaped my understanding of what's necessary for criminal justice reform, some of the ideas that I think where we can do better, and we should do better as a nation and as a people concerning our criminal justice reform. Sometimes I'm, joking with folks, and I tell them, man, you don't want to mess with me. I've been to jail before. You know what I mean? And it's the truth. I've been to jail before. I wasn't arrested, but I went to jail. I was taking somebody else. You know what I mean? I didn't go to jail myself. Because I was in trouble. But I've been in the prisons. Particularly in the state of Arizona, in the federal prisons. I've been in the local and the county jails and stuff, and to see. Even to this day, as recent as this morning, I was taking phone calls from inmates that aren't being cared for properly medically and haven't been convicted yet. And these are ongoing and systemic issues. And I think if we don't develop a holistic approach to criminal justice reform, I think that we are creating a permanent underclass that will be impossible, for these folks to get out of. And addressing criminal justice reform cannot just start once folks are able to be designated as a criminal and when they're adults. Criminal justice reform has to start when you, like with me, we have to get them into some of these communities while these folks are kids to make sure that they have a correct understanding of how to behave themselves in society. It's hard. For example, when somebody gets out of prison, when they have a felony on their record and nobody wants to hire them and they can't find a place to live and they can't, how do you expect them to not go back out and start doing what put them back in there in the first place?
Sure.
And so there has to be, you have recidivism issues, you have a whole system that needs to be reformed. And we'll talk more about those specifics about that. Stephen's story. I was asked recently, I think had to do something with the profession of law. I was asked in the context of being a lawyer. They said, what one case that has come to your office or that you've dealt with that has changed the trajectory of your practice of law? And without hesitance, unequivocally, it's the Stephen Baker story that changed my life as a lawyer, that changed my life as a man. I would even go as far as that gave me a different outlook even as far as ministry is concerned. And because Stephen's story touched so many areas that I'm involved in, ministry, lawyering, having been a police officer. And I'll never forget that call. It wasn't very many days after February 21st, 2018. And it was a call. I get calls from the jail all the time. We got clients in there, I try to keep them out of there, you know what I mean? But I got called, and I hear this voice on the other end, it makes an announcement. You are receiving a legal call from Maricopa County Jail, 4th Avenue Jail. It's, Stephen Baker. And I'm thinking, Stephen Baker? Stephen Baker? But hold up. Wait, I only know one Stephen Baker. The only Stephen Baker that I knew on that day in February 2020 or 2018 was a bright, intelligent, phenomenal singer, gentle soul. And this got to be another Stephen Baker, but I heard the name and I heard his voice, and I said, that sounds like Stephen. And from there, that's where the Stephen Baker story began. And I preface that to say, and I'll let, Judy, his mother, Kimi, his younger brother, speak to that narrative. That's where the Stephen Baker story, I knew him before then. I'd seen him in church singing and different things, and he knew who I was from the church capacity, but never from a capacity of needing a lawyer, and needing a lawyer fast. Stephen calls me that day, and the Stephen that I knew and still know him to be this day, even though he's no longer with us, was just a gentle young man. I say that simply to say this. One of the things that our criminal justice system must embrace and must realize is that there are people that find themselves in the claws of the criminal justice system that should have never been there to begin with. And Stephen, your son, your brother, unfortunately, and it still hurts me that Stephen went through that, was one of those young men. You guys tell me about, I can, interject the story, but tell me, this is your son, your brother. Talk to me about Stephen. Yeah.
Well, as you said, he was a gentle, very gentle soul. He would forgive anyone. You mistreat him, you do him wrong, he was still going to love you and still treat you, nicely. I would get angry and say, I'll deal with it for you. I'd get angry at him for not being angry. But when this incident occurred, I didn't know what to think or believe. It was a bunch of different stories we were getting, very confusing. And once he was behind bars, he would call and we would pray together. He would ask me to pray for him because it was just a hard time for him in there. And he didn't know if he was going to get out. But we all believed, the family, that he was innocent. The evidence showed it, but we didn't know what we were going to do. And of course, you, our angel, came to our rescue, as you have many a times. And
Yeah. This is going to be a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
I realize that. And so we're just going to take our time and let this conversation unfold. I will premise this with some context for our audience. So Stephen was falsely accused. He was imprisoned unjustly, and Quacy was his attorney who was able to secure his release after 69 days. Incarcerated, and Stephen was suffering from some medical issues while he was in prison, and it was on that premise mainly that he was able to be freed because he was in need of vital medications for his health issues. So actually it would be a good time to bring Kimi into this conversation. So first of all, I have to say I'm so sorry for your loss for both of you, for your entire family, because I can only imagine what this 5-year, 6-year journey must have been like, and to lose him in such an untimely way after securing his freedom and being able to declare his innocence. Yeah. It is quite a story, but it is your life, so I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
But Kimi, if you can just speak to not only this ordeal, but also about your brother.
I'll start with speaking to my brother. Stephen and I, we had a very different relationship. It was almost like I was the older brother at times. Right. And so he would sparingly call me, like my mom said, if it was prayer or, a more serious spiritual matter, that's when he would get me involved. But I think he, in a sense, didn't want to let me down, And so my first learning of the story came from Quacy. And I of course, I made the call to him, and he wept and told me the whole story while he was there. He reached out to me from the prison, and just hearing the heartbreak in his voice, to know that you are confined, but you're innocent, and you could. There's in the spiritual realm, there's a practice called discernment. And it'll tell you everything you need to know. Even if you're not in the church world, there's an inner voice that we all have. And just listening to my brother's voice, to the heartbreak in it, to the sorrow, to the desperation, I could hear the innocence coming from that call. And so it really it cripples you as a family to know that your hands are tied, like you know that you can prove it by way of your spirit, your discernment, by way of you have more experience with this person than the officers, the judges, so you know. And so to hear the innocence and know that even though we have more rapport, there's nothing we can do to convince this system that is holding an innocent person, hostage, so to speak, was crippling. But I think speaking to the life of my brother, many of the conversations we had, there's always a purpose for everything that God does. Everything he does, there's a purpose. And so to hear him turn something that was adverse concerning him specifically, but to hear how he used his life even behind the bars for ministry, he told me a story of a gentleman in there who wanted to kill himself because he was confined, he was facing life. And so he said, brother, I prayed with him and I ministered to him. So even in his worst moment, he figured out how to take that and figure out what God was doing with that moment. Even if he was just in there for a season to witness to that guy. That was the life of my brother. Yeah. He used his life as a vessel for others. And so though he faced some challenges, we all will, he never lost perspective of why he was here. Sure. And so, now that my brother's not here, I can relish in the fact that his life was still well lived. Yeah. So,
amen to that.
Yeah.
So I think we need to bring in some context as to what actually happened, how this unfolded, right? So
I get this call. I get this call from the jail, and I presume Stephen had my number. I'm sure he did. You know what I mean? Or he got it from one of them. You know what I mean? He had my number. And I get this call. Like I said, it's, Maricopa County Jail recording, call from Stephen Baker. I'm thinking, Stephen, this is the church. What are you doing? You know what I mean? I'm thinking, he's got a DUI or something. Or, I'm thinking. And he says to me, Bishop. He was calling me at that point, because he knows that I was the bishop in the church. And when he said, Bishop, I'm in jail. And I said, Stephen, what are you doing in jail? Now, mind you, you can't record attorney phone calls. They're privileged phone calls. So I'm like, Stephen, what's going on? He said, you haven't been watching the news? I said, no, Stephen, I haven't been watching. He said, it's all over the news, and I'm so embarrassed. And he started crying on the phone. He was downtown at I think 4th Avenue Jail at the time. And I said, okay, Stephen, I'm coming down to see you right now. I stopped what I was doing. I don't even remember what I was doing. I told James, my business partner, hey, I'm going down to the jail, Stephen. You got a potential client down there. I get up, I go down to the jail, and the jail, as an attorney, they let you actually up in the jail facility so you can have that privacy of conversation with someone. And again, I was going there, because he knew me as the bishop, but I was going there in my legal capacity as a lawyer. I get there and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Stephen, and he has on this orange jumpsuit, sitting behind this cage, and he has this look on his face of worry that you never see on Stephen's face. And I said, Stephen, what happened? He starts telling me what happened. He said, well, I was just walking down the street, and the police, I was coming out of a gas station, QT gas station, and all of a sudden, he said, the police just came up on me. They put me in handcuffs, put me in the back of the car, and then they stood me outside of the car, shined a light on me, and some lady another cop car drove by, and then all of a sudden, they put me in the car and told me I was under arrest, and they brought me down here. They started questioning me about some T-Mobile store or something that had been robbed over some cell phones. And I said, this is me being a lawyer. Stephen, what are you doing robbing a T-Mobile store for a cell phone? You got a phone. I said, and why are you stealing cell phones? Son, what are you? And he said, and he called me Bishop. He said, Bishop, I didn't do it. I'm like, the lady drove by. The car driving by was probably an infield line. Me being a police officer, I knew what that was. They shine a spotlight on you. This is an infield lineup. That's common in the criminal justice process. I said, Stephen, what? You didn't do it? Bishop, I didn't do it. And I'm thinking to myself, now, come on now. Because all of my criminal defense, none of them ever did it. You know what I mean? Some people say, how do you defend guilty people? Well, no, I don't defend guilty people. I defend the Constitution of the United States in service of the court. That's what criminal defense attorneys do. But Stephen's trying to tell me this stuff, that he didn't do this. I'm saying, if the lady that was inside of the store said you did it, what's going on? And I will never forget, there's certain things that happened in this Stevens story that I promise a book needs to be written about this, that is permanently etched in my mind, that it changed my life forever. Stephen looked at me through that cage and tears started running down his face. And these were his exact words to me: "Sir, I respect you too much. You remember me tell you this, to call you down here and lie to your face about something like this." He said, "Bishop, I didn't do this, and I just need you to believe me." I went to court the other day because his first court hearing or so had already happened by the time I got down there. I went to his arraignment and whatnot, and they tried to give him, my mind's certainly correct, there's an EDC court in the state courts of Arizona. It's called early disposition court. But just bring you in there. Here's this plea. Take this, and we'll go. We got the evidence. They had an infield lineup. They had, you know what I mean? And I think the plea at that time was like 12, 15 years, something like that. If he would have went to trial and lost, he was facing 70+ years. Because of the amount and the kidnapping and holding folks at gunpoint. No, I mean, this is, he's going to be gone the rest of his life if he goes to trial and lose. And he said, "I need you to believe me. I had nothing to do with that." I said, "Okay. You promised me you didn't have anything to do with that." He said, "Bishop, I promise." And he's in there crying. He said, "I just need you to help me." He says, "Oh, and I promise." He said, "I promise I'm going to pay you. I'll pay." I said, "Okay." Lawyers, we have to have fee agreements with folks and all of this other stuff. Normally, you know what I mean? These kinds of cases, these are hundreds of thousands of dollars cases. Criminal defense attorneys, they get paid. If you don't believe it, go ask some of the folks that are charged with 90+ indictments and all that other stuff. They'll tell you this stuff gets pretty expensive pretty fast. No pun intended.
Right. We are talking about your campaign.
No pun intended. This stuff, the bills rack up pretty fast. So he signed the fee agreement and whatnot. And I said, "I'm just going to go to work on it." Honestly, I'm still thinking in the back of my head, okay, maybe you didn't go in the store, but you had to have something to do with it. The lady said she saw you, and it was you that was at. So in the back of my head, the whole time I'm thinking, because you're trying to, you have to, protect your defendant from exposure. So at this point, I asked him, I said, does your family know what's going on? No, they don't know all of the details of whatnot, what's going on. And so my mind serves me correct. I think we ended up having a family meeting at your house with him and the siblings and his father and everybody. And I'm explaining to them, because he can talk to me in a way that he can't talk to them. And so there's certain things that I can relate to them, and he gives me permission to relate to them. And I'll never forget sitting in your house that day, and I'm explaining. As a matter of fact, I think I had just came from the jail, because I think I was still in my suit. So. Yeah, and the other stuff, And I'm sitting there explaining to everybody what's going on, and I see Judy start crying. And he, trying to be the big brother, pacing the floor. I saw, the Treese's face, his sister, and everybody. Kimi Senior, dad, he's hot, mad. Like, where is my son? What is, and to curtail all of that emotion. And I remember Judy telling me, "Bishop, if you can help my son, help him. Do you believe?" Because there were things that they weren't going to be able to have access to that I would have. That's a part of what we need to fix in the criminal justice. You know what I mean? They didn't have access to any of this stuff, and they're relying on me. Some public defender had come in there, told this boy to take a double-digit plea deal, and he was adamant that he was innocent. So to fast forward the story, I went to work. I got the initial disclosure documents and police reports, and I'm reading this stuff, and the reports sound like Kimi was there, and Kimi was doing. because they identified Stephen, not Kimi, yeah. He said, not me, not you, not Kimi. Stephen. It sounded like Stephen was there.
I was at Bass Pro.
Right. His hair, the body build of the guy, all of the stuff, and the QT that Stephen was at wasn't too far from the, all of the dots look like they align. But Kimi talked about something a little bit ago called like discernment. Something inside of you knows that something isn't right. Stephen is able to call his attorney, virtually as much as he wants. You know what I mean? So he's calling me, letting me know that he was okay in there. Because again, he can call me more frequently than he can call his family. So I was keeping, them abreast of what's going on. One day he calls and he says, Bishop, I'm not doing well. I said, what's going on? He said, I got these underlying, these health conditions when I need you to come down. So I go down to the jail. I talk to him. He explains to me what's going on with this. He needs, and he needs his medications and whatnot. And they're not, they're just not doing right. You know what I mean? And that's a problem. One of the things that needs to be addressed as well. I called the prosecutor. I said, will you agree to modify these release conditions concerning this? I tell her, I said, he has some health conditions, he's not going. The prosecutor looks me in the face and tells me, no. He held the woman at gunpoint, robbed a store, stole tens of thousands of dollars of phone. No. Why should I modify a release condition? He had a bail that was so high that most families you don't have $250,000 cash to go get somebody out of. I'm sure y'all remember this. You're going to get $250,000 or what? You know what I mean? Nobody has money. Regular everyday folks don't have that kind of money.
That's right.
And we went through the bail. I filed to modify the bail once. Judge said no because of, the nature of the charges. You know what I mean? I went back to Judge at that time. I think it was Judge Kemp. And I said, I need to rewrite this motion, and I need to argue this motion at the bench. You know what I mean? Because I didn't, you didn't want to file all of his health information and whatnot in a public document.
Sure.
So we filed the motion. The prosecutor said no. We went up to the bench, and I explained to the judge. I said, Judge, this is what's going on. And if you don't let him out, then we're going to be dragging a dead body out of there. I said, let's get him out so he can, and he has alleged his innocence and da-da-da. And the judge, looked at me, and he agreed. He said, we need to release him. So they ended up releasing him. I think they had him on a ankle monitor and all of that stuff, and then they finally let him out. This is after it took 69 days. 69 days. And it was the longest 69 days. It felt like an eternity, But we finally got Stephen out, and we still have to face these charges. We're going through stuff. We're combing through reports. I said, Stephen, is there anybody that I need an alibi. You're telling me you weren't there. Who were you with? Who did you talk to? Y'all, I worked tirelessly. I pulled phone records and this and that. Remember, when he was arrested, he had his phone on him. So it was in the police department custody. They were sending subpoenas to Apple and all of this stuff, trying to get evidence because they knew this is our guy. We got him. I'm sitting there grilling Stephen. Stephen, where were you? Who did you talk to? I had it all mapped out. Who we talked to, who we text. I talked to the people that he talked to. And if somebody demonstrate to me that Stephen wasn't there. Well, I talked to this guy. He had a friend of his. I talked to this guy 3 minutes before the police officer contacted me. He gave me the guy's phone number. I called him. He told me, sure enough, yeah, Stephen was on the phone with me right before this time. So I'm tracking this whole case.
Sure.
I go to talk to the guy, set up a time to go talk to him, because I'm gonna get a deposition of this guy. You know what I mean? Because this is my alibi to say he wasn't at that store 3 minutes ago. He was on the phone with this guy. We go to interview that guy, and you remember this? The day before I'm going to interview the only alibi witness that I have. He's in Scottsdale one night, steps off a curb, gets hit by a car. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
And dies.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Only alibi witness that we had. Stephen came to my office, and
Take your time.
He cried like a baby.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm going to jail, huh? And I didn't want to say yes to him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to say yes, but as a lawyer that does this, I was so hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he was scared. I'll never forget it. He was scared. I was scared. I was scared. I said, how am I going to tell Judy? How am I going to tell Kimi and Mr. Bay that you're probably not going to see your son anymore? We sat there and we cried. He went home. And I'm a man of prayer, and I ain't gonna get here and act like I'm not who I am. I believe God, and I think everybody's kind of clear about that now. And I started praying. I never forget one night. It was a week or two later. I think all roads had led to it. We were waiting for the rest of the discovery and all of that stuff to come in. And I went to church that night, and on the way home, it was like if God himself was sitting down next to me and talking. He said, go back to the office. So I went back to the office. We had a church at 8 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock at night. I'm at the office. I had been there all day. And I go back to the office, and I'm sitting there, and Kimmy's file, or Stephen's file was sitting on the desk. And I start combing through, just looking through it again. I'm trying to find a way out for this kid. He said, it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock by then. He said, call Stephen and ask him if he had a Google email account, a Gmail account. I ain't Gmail. Well, you know what I mean? This is that, that's that discernment thing that you were talking about. It just came to me, you know what I mean? I don't know what folks, different people's religious persuasions and spiritual beliefs are. I know what mine are. Right. And called Stephen. He was asleep. He was asleep. He didn't live far from the office at that time. He called. I said, Stephen, yeah, is everything all right? I said, yeah, everything is fine. Do you have an email account? Yes, sir, I have an email account. Gmail? Yeah, I have a Gmail account. Come down. Did you check your email ever on your phone? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I checked my email on my phone. Come down to my office. Right? Do you remember your password? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Come down to this office right now. And he comes down. He's tonight. You want me to come in? No, I want you to come tonight. That's what I want you. I want you to come tonight. Stephen comes down to the office. He had on his pajamas. He had on his pajamas. He comes to the office. Nobody's there. He has on his pajamas. He comes to the office, and I give him my computer. I said, log on to your Gmail account. He logged onto his Gmail account, and I said, did you ever turn Google Maps off on your Gmail account? He said, Bishop, what's Google Maps? I have an iPhone. You know what I mean? These new, young kids. I have an iPhone. I said Google Maps. It's just on. If it's on, then I don't know how it works now. But then, if you didn't turn it off, it was just on. He said, Bishop, I don't know what that is. We started going through his Google account, and we click on it. You can see maps from a computer, where it was, and we clicked on that maps button. Mm-hmm. This is, months later, and we scrolled all the way back to February 21st, and sure enough, wow, Google Maps was on, and it showed, and I pinpointed the address of the T-Mobile store, and pinpointed him, and it was exactly what Stephen said. Mm-hmm. He was nowhere near that T-Mobile. He had went from his friend's house to the QT, walked around. It showed right how long he stayed there while the police had detained him and all of that stuff. And he said, yeah, no, Bishop, no, I told you I wasn't there. See, I told you. Ooh, praise God. I told you I wasn't there. And, you know what I mean? And he was crying because now we had lost concrete. The witness, and now there's evidence. So I called the prosecutor the next day. I said, listen, my guy wasn't there. Right. I'm talking big trash now. Because I got the smoking gun now. That's right. But listen, lady, you know what I mean? You're going to dismiss these charges. Right. I said, he wasn't, I printed out the thing, the map, because I was afraid that we were going to lose this. This is
Right.
the evidence that we need. She said, well, I can't take your word for it, Mr. Smith. She was doing her job. I can't take your word for it. I just need to know. We went to court. I never forget the day. We went to court. I handed her the paper, said, you need to go look this stuff up because Stephen wasn't there. Get a warrant, get to his phone, and Stephen wasn't there. Tell your investigator to go look at his Gmail account. He wasn't there. Whatever you need us to sign, we'll sign it. We were walking in the court. The other two guys were still in custody. The co-defendants that actually the one that did it. Stephen and I walked up to in front of the judge, Judge Kemp, and we were standing up there, and then they bring the other co-defendants out of the side door. And it's me, Stephen, the one co-defendant's lawyer, the co-defendant, then the other one. And one of the co-defendants, one of the African-American gentlemen, looks down across his lawyer at me and Stephen standing over there, and you could hear him say, who is that? And I heard it. And I looked at Stephen. I said, Stephen, do you know who that is? He said, Bishop, I've never seen these people before in my life. If you know Stephen, well, Bishop, I've never seen these people before in my life.
Wow.
And a clear case of mistaken identity. They didn't know him. We were walking out. The other defense attorney says, my client doesn't know yours. I'm like, no kidding. My guy wasn't there. This is not your guy. You know what I mean? And the other attorney, the other defense attorney, she said, oh my God. She looked at Steve and she said, I am so sorry. I'll get I said, I need you to have your guy tell this prosecutor that this guy is not the one. Now, I said, it might put your guy in a pickle because they're saying that somebody else was there, but it wasn't this guy. She said, I'm going to talk to my guy. But that young man shouldn't be in here. Long story short, a few weeks later, we're back at court. We're still waiting for an answer. She walks in, the prosecutor, with the dismissal paper. We stand up in front of the court again. She says, Judge, I filed a dismissal, all charges against Mr. Baker. Stephen stood there and he started crying in open court. Everybody's boo-hooing. The other attorney is crying. You know what I mean? Because this is a moment where someone was caught in the crux of our criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Judy said something earlier. On our way out of the courtroom, everybody go in and out the same door. Our paths crossed with the prosecutor. And she said, good luck, Mr. Baker. And he looks at her and says, thank you, I appreciate it. And he says, and I just want you to know I'm not angry at you. I'm not mad at you. I know you were just doing your job. I don't hold anything against you, and I know you were just doing your job. But thank you. I'm going to do well. I've known I was innocent the whole time, but thank you. And I was just literally floored. By that time, we had racked up a $50,000, $60,000 law bill. We were walking out of the courtroom, and Stephen was saying, now I know I owe you a lot of money, and I'm going to do it. I don't care if I got to pay you $50 a week for the rest of my life. He's saying this. And I looked at him, I said, Stephen, nobody should have to pay a lawyer $50,000+ for something that they never should have been charged with to begin with. Don't worry about your bill. This one's on the house. You just go out of this room and just keep being the person that everybody knows you to be, that knows you. You're a free man. And I let them talk to the impact that it had on him, because once you get charged with stuff, you can't get a part, you can't get jobs, you can't, because every time they run your name, and the impact that this had, that's the impact that it had. It changed my life forever as a lawyer, and everything. As a family, how did you all, this is the impact of the criminal justice system on a family.
I don't know the word for it, but Stephen lost some things in that process. His self-esteem, and he never felt like he was enough or good enough, or, he felt like he was a disappointment. So it was hard, like you said, financially, him not being able to get his own place, a job, that kind of thing. And even relationships with family and friends. Even though he was exonerated, people still believed, you had something to do with it. So he lost something in that process. And to his last day, I was always trying to build him up and tell him, you're enough.
Yeah.
I'm not disappointed. You're not a disappointment. My my favorite thing to do was to meet Stevenson. And I just hope he knows that he wasn't a fit.
Well, this is exactly what we're here to demonstrate. Thank you so much, Judy, for putting words to this, because I think the idea for this conversation was to put a human face on this issue of criminal justice reform and how it affected not only Stephen, but you as his family as well. I mean, he was exonerated for sure, but the toll that it must have taken on his life. And I know Quacy and I have discussed, the mental health impact. And I mentioned to Judy, as a person in the healthcare industry, how that must have, such repercussions for you from not only a personal perspective, but also a professional perspective as a caregiver, to see your son go through that ordeal. So maybe we'll give Judy a break. Kimi, can you sort of speak to the impact on the family?
Sure. One thing my brother and I shared, and I'm fine, disclosing this, and he will be fine too. We're both diabetics. He was, I am. And as is my younger sister. So it's kind of a thing. But, like my mom was saying, like Quacy was saying, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's very, liberating to know that you can be freed from a charge that was never, yours in the first place. So that was a liberating moment. But then you also face the life to live thereafter that comes with the stigma of even being associated with the case. And so he had a hard time getting jobs still, even though he was freed from all the charges. He still had a problem getting a job, keeping one. I remember that what broke my heart the most, because I know the effects of diabetes. I live with it every day. He called me one day, and I'm not going to get emotional here because I'm the strong one usually, right? So he called me one day, and he asked me, do you have $12 to get a vial of insulin that cost $24, because all he had was 12. Because he could not sustain a job that would make those costs go away. And that broke my heart to hear my brother asking me for $12 for a medication that saves his life, saves my life every single day, because of the repercussions of now living a life that is now tarnished, even though he was exonerated. His life is forever tarnished. And I don't think many people realize that the system that is supposed to create a sense of peace for the world at large, right, is also capable of creating a world of turmoil when it's not carried out justly. And my brother lived with that. I got several calls for $5, 12, little increments just to get insulin. And that is one of the things that I think will forever leave a stain on our family, knowing that our brother couldn't simply get his medication that was so vital. So vital to me. I put myself in him, in his story. If that was me, I would have the same outcome. My life could be in jeopardy because of $12, you know? And so I think if we took out the detachment that we have from the human experience with our legal system, and we put the heart and emotion of this is a life, this is back into every story, even if they're guilty, this is still a life. Yeah. A lot of what we miss, a lot of what goes under the rug and the radar would change. It would be different. It would be a different narrative. And so for us, you know, we all, me and my sister, I even know myself and my sister was also diabetic. He came and picked up vials that we had just to live, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the ways that this system adversely affects even the ones connected to him. Yeah. Because even though we worried about Stephen's life behind the bars, when he got out from behind the bars, the worry never went away. Yeah. Because we didn't know if he would have his medication. So we are still worrying months, weeks after the fact of, is he still okay? And so that is one of the big burdens we carried concerning my brother. And I don't think he ever fully recovered.
Yeah, I was just thinking that same thing. I don't think Stephen.
No.
And of course, you guys know him way better than I do. But the Stephen before this and the Stephen, I don't know that he ever fully recovered emotionally, and that still hurts me to this day that this is a church kid. There's no way to say it. He's a church kid. You know, the fighter, you know, he's more, you know, inclined to say something or, you know, definitely fire off on someone. Stephen, you know what I mean? Just as gentle. And that's one of the things that, for those that are actually guilty and convicted, we need a better process to avoid recidivism. But we have to give consideration to those like Stephen that were wrongfully charged, kept in, you know, jail for 69 days. The only reason he got out was because a judge had compassion enough to know, you know, and we have to give consideration, though, for the impact that a criminal justice process has on not only folks that are convicted, but especially innocent people. There is, and I don't know if, you know, they may be able to find it in, you know, in a short, but I was looking at the mug shot that they put on all over the news. Stephen has always been a clean-cut, this runs in their family. These are fashionistas. They are the bakers there. You know what I mean? They know how to. You know, this is the Mr. Do It Up. You know what I mean? The family. He owns his own business called Book to Look. You know, baker. He does houses and renovations and clothing and, you know, he's a fashionista. Okay. But it's not just him. It's their whole family. These aren't bad people. Their youngest son, Josh, a basketball player at Grand Canyon University. I mean, this is a family of professionals, and these are good people. But the impact, now she has to deal with, my son's face has been spread all across the town, in the church community that we were raised in, the Church of God in Christ and other things. Now, all of a sudden, you know, sometimes the saints aren't as nice as they should be, and now everybody's wondering, but child, I wonder, there got to be something to it. You know what I mean? And going down, just the impact, and I don't think Stephen ever fully.
No. That's why he ultimately ended up moving to Atlanta. Yeah. And he often said, I will never, ever come back to Arizona, at least not to live. Yeah. I'll come visit, of course, but he swore on his life he would never come back to Arizona.
Wow. Yeah. And I don't, and even in the framework of this conversation, and Stephen never charged anybody with wrongdoing either. He, like I said, when I saw him, tell the prosecutor, I don't hold. You were just doing your job. When he thanked the judge when we were walking out of the court, he had no animosity. He said they were just doing their job. I just got caught in the web, but Stephen bore the burden of hundreds of other people.
Sure.
Right.
It wasn't, you know what I mean? I don't think this was a black thing. I think it just was a pure case of mistaken identity. And I think the victim in that particular case thought she saw, you know what I mean? But there's a suggestiveness of standing somebody by a cop car and shining a spotlight on him that's kind of like, well, yeah, it got to be him. If you weren't standing by, it's things like that in criminal justice reform that we have to fix. I was, and could talk about this to the degree that Judy and Kimi are comfortable with. When Stephen passed away, and God rest his soul, certainly miss him. In fact, he text or call, one of the two, a little bit before Thanksgiving, just not long before he passed, he text or call, just to make sure. He always kept up with me, you know what I mean, after that. When he passed away, I was, the family asked me to do his eulogy at his funeral, and the sermon titled eulogy that I never forget. I've never had delivered a sermon or a eulogy from that text before, you know what I mean? But it speaks of a man in the Bible that Jesus stood up for, and the man's name was Stephen. And his eulogy, the title of his eulogy was Standing Up for Stephen. And that lives with me still to this day. That somebody had to stand up for Stephen to go to the, and of course Stephen's a Christian man. I believe that Jesus stood up for him. I believe that, his family stood up for him and stood with him. And I believe as a nation, we have to stand up for other people just like Stephen that have been wrongfully charged, wrongfully arrested, wrongfully incarcerated. And not only Stephen, those that have paid their debt back to society. Mm-hmm. We can do better by these people. And I vow to you, Judy and Kimi, and that I carry Stephen's story with me, and we're gonna get some legislation passed if I get to Congress, when I get to Congress,
right.
to honor him, an innocent man. I'm not saying the criminal justice system is bad. We ain't defunding the police and all that stuff. It sounds wonderful, but it's stupid until somebody trying to break in your house. Right. And now, what are you gonna do now that you defunded the police? You know what I mean? That's silly. You know what I mean? But I think we could be more holistic in our approach, and so I thank you both for letting me serve Stephen in that matter. There are a whole lot of lawyers that are better than I am. You know what I mean? Maybe. I'm just teasing. They're great lawyers and whatnot. But that's been one of the greatest honors of my life. And as a lawyer, it literally changed me. As going down this political road, when I was writing out my positions on criminal justice and reform, Stephen was on my mind, and because we can do better. How's the family doing now? Stephen's in a better place. We all going there one day. How's the family doing now and healing up with,
Coping. One day at a time.
Yeah.
That's an awesome, brave statement. We are not well. None of us are well. Every day is a struggle.
Yeah.
The simple fact you can't pick up the phone, and there's moments that will always remind us of him. Your heart still sinks at the hope. Maybe it's not true. I was on Instagram the other day, and there's a popular page. So there's your regular feed, and then there's a popular page of posts that are frequent. Mm-hmm. And so one was on my popular page because it usually picks posts that you generally will like. So it was a fitness post or something like that. And I saw the post and I clicked it, because I work out probably can't tell on this shirt. Don't worry about it.
Robust physique.
Yeah, there's a physique under here. That's crazy. And so I clicked the post to see, I always looking for new training methods. And so I watched those frequent. So I clicked the post and I saw Stephen's like on it. And I thought it was a recent post and my heart dropped. It just dropped. And then I looked at the date at the bottom of the post and it was 6 months old. And it's like moments like those that just cripple you. And so, like she said, we're coping, but we're not well at this moment. It's fresh, and we really miss them. So, yeah, one day at a time.
For sure. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here, for telling your story and how it has truly impacted Quacy's life and career. I know you're indebted to him for, having handled the legal aspects of this story. And I think we've only scratched the surface about this issue of criminal justice reform. I mean, this is one story, an important story, but one of many. And I know that we could do multiple conversations on this topic, but as it relates to Quacy's run for the U.S. Congress, this is exactly the type of issue that he feels he can go to Washington and make a difference on. And we get this question on the campaign trail all the time. Why is Quacy the person who should be our pick, our choice for that seat? And this is one of those issues that we can bring up that he has experience in, he is versed in, and he can go ready on day one to Washington and speak to. And I think it would be wonderful if there were some legislation crafted in Stephen's name at some point. So we're going to hold you to that.
Do so.
So, any final words before we wrap up today?
No, just thank you. And we can talk policy and all of that stuff later, but I agree with both of them. Coping, and it's still fresh. It really is. I'm a tough guy, but I've never been so moved by someone's life like I was by Stephen. And thank you, and I mean that from my heart. Thank you for the honor of serving your son and serving your brother, serving your family. I'll never let Stephen's name go down as long as I have my hand or foot in the criminal justice process, because it literally changed me forever. And I'll go to Washington with Stephen on my heart and on my mind, because we can do better. And so thank you. And I'll talk better next time.
No.
This is a little touchy.
Sure. We can talk about these issues. There's a lot of information to share with our viewers and listeners regarding policy and how you feel that you're ready to tackle this, for not only Arizona, but for our nation. But actually, I want to leave us with some final words from Mom, from Judy. Would you like to share some final words about Stephen?
I just want to say thank you to Bishop Quacy. He's Bishop. You're thanking us, but thank you. It hardly seems like enough to say, but thank you, really.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you.
Kimmy, anything finally?
I mean, I echo that. Of course, we have a rapport that y'all don't need to be privy to. This is Miles literally about to say that. Get out of my head, man. This is my guy, and I want my guy to become your guy. And so I endorse this guy. I know his heart. I know his character. I know his ministry. I know his passion. I know his drive. And the world will be a better place. Once his life is done, this world will be a better place. And if it's a matter of one vote, let that one vote be yours, because this is the guy. So I love you, man.
I love you too.
Wow. Fantastic words to finish. Thank you so much. And I know you mean it sincerely. Yes. My guy is your guy. Or I want my guy to be your guy. There you go.
Write that down.
I know, right? this is gonna be on a T-shirt
Yes.
pretty soon.
You did read off.
Right.
Fundraising for campaign purposes.
That's right.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap this edition up for today. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Kimi and Judy for being here today with us. Really, it is so meaningful that you took time out of your day to come here and speak to us. I know this was very much at the top of the list for Quacy to have guests come in and speak to the impact that they've had on his life. And so I'm glad we were able to share that today. And we will see you next time on another edition of Quacy Smith and the Challenge We Face. Thank you so much.